you all win the prize for not only setting your clocks ahead, but arriving early. So thank you all for being here this morning. We're delighted to continue our class this morning, and we'll continue in our exercises of growing spiritually. This assignment and this lesson is on the Word of Wisdom, taken from section 86 of our Doctrine and Covenants. And so as we prepare to go into class, I would like to ask that you would bow with me for a word of prayer, and then we'll invite Rebecca up. She's going to be leading us through our discussion on the Word of Wisdom. So if you would bow with me, please. Father in heaven, we're grateful for this chance to gather together this morning. We're grateful to gather to your house of worship, that we may study together, that we may look into your word, and that we might draw closer to the understanding of the ways that you have for us, as you have created us, and as you have designed us, and as you have desired for your people to come back into your presence. Father, as you have laid out before us the opportunity to be a part of the building of thy kingdom here on earth, we pray that we might continue to come to that understanding, that we might continue to make those things that are secular to become sacred in our lives. And Father, that we might have the strength to be about the work that you have called us to do. So Father, this morning as we gather for class and for study and discussion and fellowship and for worship and the spoken word later this morning, Father, we would invite thy Holy Spirit to be our abiding portion, Father, that we might have your Spirit to be with us, and that we might have that greater understanding that would come from thee. All these things we ask and pray in Jesus' most holy name. Amen.
All right, good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. To get started, I think what I'd like to do is just start, everybody flip in your scriptures, if you will, to Doctrine and Covenants, section 86. We're going to talk about the Word of Wisdom today, so I thought it would be good to start out with the reading of the Word of Wisdom. It's not super long, and I think there's a lot of, if you think about people who know that you go to this church versus what they think they know about you and what they know about the Word of Wisdom, I always think there's a few disconnects, so it would be good to go back and just start with that. So actually, let's see, I'm going to ask, are there volunteers that would read? And because we need a microphone for that person, so if you'd come up to the mic and read, that would be great. I don't think you'll be on the video. Yeah, you will. But anyway, so I'll start with the introduction of the Word of Wisdom, and then if you'll just take turns, come up to the mic, everybody do a paragraph, and that would be great. If you don't want to, obviously don't feel like you have to. So. All right, so volunteers could go on and stand up now. We'll get to the microphone. All right, this revelation, known as the Word of Wisdom, was given through Joseph Smith Jr. to a conference of high priests assembled at Kirtland, Ohio, February 27, 1833. It was described as, quote, a word of wisdom for the benefit of the council of high priests assembled in Kirtland and the church, and also the saints in Zion, to be sent greeting, not by commandment or constraint, but by revelation and the word of wisdom, showing forth the order and will of God in the temporal salvation of all saints in the last days, given for a principle with promise, adapted to the capacity of the weak and the weakest of all saints who are or can be called saints, quote. All right.
I'll read paragraph 1, and then if somebody wants to read paragraph 2. Behold, verily thus saith the Lord unto you, in consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days, I have warned you and forewarned you by giving unto you this word of wisdom by revelation, that inasmuch as any man drinketh wine or strong drink among you, behold, it is not good, neither meat in the sight of your Father, only in assembling yourselves together to offer up your sacraments before him. And behold, this should be wine, yea, pure wine of the grape, of the vine, of your own make. And again, strong drinks are not for the belly, but for the washing of your bodies. And again, tobacco is not for the body, neither for the belly, and is not good for man, but it is an herb for the bruises and all sick cattle, to be used with judgment and skill. And again, hot drinks are not for the body or belly.
And again, verily I say unto you, all wholesome herbs God hath ordained for the constitution, nature, and use of man, every herb in the season thereof, and every fruit in the season thereof, and these to be used with prudence and thanksgiving. Yea, flesh also of beasts and of the fowls of the air, I, the Lord, hath ordained for the use of man with thanksgiving. Nevertheless, they are to be used sparingly, and it is pleasing unto me that they should not be used only in times of winter, or of cold, or famine.
All grains is ordained for the use of man and of beast, to be the staff of life, not only for man, but for the beasts of the field, and the fowls of heaven, and all wild animals that run or creep on the earth, and these hath God made for the use of man only in times of famine and excess of hunger. All grain is good for the food of man, and also the fruit of the vine, and that which yieldeth fruit, which in the ground or above the ground. Nevertheless, wheat for man, and corn for the ox, and oats for the horse, and rye for the fowls, and for swine, and for all beasts of the field, and barley for all useful animals, and for mild drinks, and also other grain. And all saints who remember to keep and do these sayings, walking in obedience to the commandments, shall receive health in their navel, and marrow to their bones, and shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge, even hidden treasures, and shall run and not be weary, and shall walk and not faint. And I, the Lord, give unto them a promise that the destroying angel shall pass by them, and as children of Israel, and not slay them. Amen.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Doesn't take long to read. I've read it several times, and it seems like every time something different stands out in my mind, probably due to my age or something like that. When we look in the Exercises in Growing Spiritually book, she's written out a couple pages of things that were important to her, and the one I wanted to look at was on page 35, that second page there, the third paragraph down. She has a testimony about the word of wisdom. And she said one of our church sisters in Australia had followed the word of wisdom all of her life, but was bedridden with arthritis. She prayed and fasted to know why she hadn't received the promised health. An angel came to her and told her to drink barley tea. The recipe that has come to us is to boil 8 cups of water and add 1 cup of barley in the hull. Shut off the fire and let it steep for 1 hour. Strain off the liquid and drink it. The author's father-in-law had arthritis so badly that he was taking about 10 pain pills a day. So they had suggested to him he try barley tea. He drank a half of a recipe a day, and within 2 weeks he was off all of his pain pills. And when he started the barley tea, he couldn't even touch his knees, and about a year later he could touch his ankles. So I think it's interesting she mentions that testimony about the word of wisdom. I remember when my great-grandfather had cancer, for some reason he was told to eat the back ends of the lightning bugs. And so he would make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he captured some lightning bugs, and he would eat the back end of those. I don't know why or how or if that had anything in it, or if it was placebo effect or whatever, but he did feel better after that. So. And maybe you guys have some testimonies of people who have tried things or given up certain foods. Aren't there severe allergies to like gluten or dairy, or people have various things that affect them with their diets. So did anybody have a testimony of anything that they've eaten or not eaten, or anything they've done or not done that correlates with the word of wisdom?
Missionary reunion summer ago, we had a lady who was the daughter of Mildred Smith, who's written a lot of cookbooks based on the word of wisdom, and her brother's Ron Smith. And so the modern day science, which we know a lot more about our bodies and the things we take into our bodies and the things that we need to build cells and be healthier, has, in a nutshell, she has continued to kind of validate some of the things that were given so many years ago that we really didn't know in modern day science and some of these things. And so I know you've got some things about that, but I thought what caught me this time in reading it was obviously these are things to be healthy, and I thought it was interesting that I'm always looking at the why. Like the Lord gives us, this is important because, and so that we can, the very end of that, it talks about finding wisdom and great treasures of knowledge. I think about fasting as a way to, to put away things that, we might take into our body that might make us sluggish or it might make us tired. But by fasting and putting away some things, that's a way that we can also try to fine-tune our focus. But I love how the very end of this, the Lord refers back to that scripture in Isaiah, that they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint, and the Lord will give them a promise. And so what I took in that, I guess because I enjoy doing a little walking and jogging, that there is an element of what we take in and also the exercise and actually just moving our bodies so that we can be strong to be a part of the work of the Lord. So that was, I guess if I have a testimony about that, it's just trying in the last 13, 14 years of just doing something, of moving and doing some of these races. Some people can and some people can't. But just walking or jogging, I find in those moments a lot of reflection time. And that's been, I think, helpful and a testimony to me about drawing closer, to the Lord, or at least blocking out some of the world for that period of time.
Right. Danielle?
I'd like to piggyback on that idea. The idea of fasting is all throughout the scriptures, and it is such a good thing for your spiritual health, as in focusing and praying and using that time in a spiritual way. But fasting has such a good effect on your physical body as well. And I don't like repairing cells and lowering inflammation and all those things in your body. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that it goes hand in hand.
Right. God knew what he was talking about. Yes, Ray.
I like the very first paragraph in 1:8, talking about the evil designs of man in the last days. And all we have to do is look at the junk food industry, or even nutrition itself. This debate is going on now, even within Congress. Was it Robert Kennedy Jr. who is now turning the tables on the nutritional things that either the FDA is supporting or whoever else. So it seems like through the years we've gotten everything backwards. Your list of junk foods on that one page, those are the very things in the last month that I have eliminated from myself. So using that, along with the word of wisdom, along with trying to make myself better prepared for what the Lord would have for me, that's what I have been practicing for 4 weeks. I've lost weight. My cognitive skills seem to be returning more than before. I'm seeing things spiritually that I hadn't seen before, which I'll touch on a little bit today. But all of these are out there for people to make money. They want to make money off of all these habits that we have gotten, but God wants us to have the habit of becoming his child in his kingdom. So that's what we're striving for. In eliminating this junk, it is also a physical health thing, but it's also a spiritual health thing.
Right. And I think we think about the spiritual warfare, I think it's easy to envision that Satan is working his, against us spiritually. I don't often think about Satan meeting me in the grocery store, and being in the choices that I make for my family and what we're eating and putting into our bodies. And yet, after you read some of these things that are on our handout, it's pretty evident that Satan has had a hand in making sure that we have as many temptations as possible to keep our bodies from not functioning, and when we walk through the grocery store. I have tried to go to exercise classes throughout my life, and I just met a woman who is probably 20 years older than me and has better muscles than I do. She's more agile than I am. She's more fit than I am. And but her favorite saying is, motion is lotion. And I was thinking about that. And, oftentimes when we're injured, we want to, protect ourselves and not move. And but that's one of the most harmful things we can do, because when we stop moving, then sure as the world, 6 months down the road, the things that we used to be able to do, we can't do anymore. So, and oftentimes if I'll get up and actually go move, then I'll feel better. And one of the things, after I had that kidney stone, I kind of got out of my workout regimen, and it's been really hard to pick that back up because now it's cold and wet and rainy and all the things. But I was hurting so badly, I told myself, I need to go work out so I don't hurt so badly. And that's what I did this week. And I actually feel better than when I did, not doing anything. So, and again, I think that testifies to that, God has made us to be in motion, to be doing things, working for Him, working for our families and things like that. So, Nathan, did you have anything to add about how food can work for us or against us?
Yeah, definitely can. I mean, I've gone through a number of diet regimens through cheerleading when I was up at IU. Just from personal experience, I found that I basically learned that I could eat the same 5 things every day for a year, and just not thinking, like not having food as a variable creates so much less stress in my life. A lot like more noticeable than I thought it would be, because when you think of food, it's just food, right? But not having to choose what you're gonna eat, not having to choose where you're gonna go, not having to wait for the food, so the meal prepping and things like that. I dropped 35 pounds in a year when I was 21 up in Bloomington. Now that's a little harder now, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think taking food out as a variable, just finding what works and what tastes good, what's good for you, will give you the energy, and just sticking with it kind of as a routine has changed the game for me a lot.
So that whole idea of eating for energy versus eating for pleasure is so,
Oh, yeah. So basically, I kind of had to change the mindset of food as something to enjoy as fuel. Like, I needed to go work out and practice and cheer a game in the next 24 hours. So I needed food to fuel that, not to just be happy 4 times in the next 24 hours.
right.
And that was a big change for me.
When I think America, as a whole, eating is more seen, I think, as entertainment. We like to go out to eat. We like to get that fancy dessert. We like to, all those kinds of things. And so even that, the way we've twisted what food was intended for versus what food can be. And I'm not saying don't go celebrate your birthday or whatever. That's not my point. But I think on a daily basis, it gets to be a little more difficult. I know on vacation, when you've had dessert for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you come home and you feel pretty sluggish and you feel pretty gross, and but you can see what that sugar, like you were talking about, Ray, all those additives and stuff, when we're ingesting all that, really slows our bodies down and our mental capacity as well.
So I have one quick question.
Yeah.
On the, when it talks about the fruits in their season thereof, just thinking about that, because I think, if I think about strawberries in their season, does that mean strawberry shortcake? And if it's bananas, is it banana pudding? Or pumpkin pie? So maybe I'm a little off track on that. I just was going to get everybody else's. I think we can find a way to really, sorry, this is kind of
Yeah, well, now it's crazy because you can go to the grocery anytime and get fruits that are, quote, in season, I guess, because they're all right there. They've been sprayed with all kinds of things to keep them looking nice, and they've been bred to, have the largest strawberries and the fewest seeds in the grapes and all the things. And so, yeah, that's a whole nother discussion that I'm not educated in, but the bioengineering of what they've done to our seeds and foods, I know that there's a lot of talk about that. A lot of interest in the country right now about what we are eating and pesticides and all those kinds of things. Anybody else have something to add?
I just want to go back to the very top of 35 of that first sentence,
Mm-hmm.
where it talks about the health in our navel. And they gave an illustration of health in pregnancy. I always look at that as a digestive function more than anything
Mm-hmm.
helping our neighbor.
Yeah.
I know that because Marlene experiences just the opposite, but she has those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it has to do with things that happened in her early childhood life, but also the overeating habits has kind of contributed to that. The help and enable. I think for most of us who have those healthy digestive system appreciate that.
Yeah.
And those that don't kind of wish that we did.
Right.
So to me, that's a very important, the help and enable.
Yeah, I know a family that has some stomach issues, and one of the people in the family eats a very strict diet and still has issues, and the other person doesn't as much because they know they're going to have stomach issues as anyway. So, but there are certain trigger foods that you eventually learn. If I eat this, I'm going to feel terrible, and so. Sometimes the desire to have that food still outweighs the feeling terrible. And for other people in that family, it's hard for them to understand, but we all have to make our own decisions and we make our own way. And that's one of the things about the Word of Wisdom. I think some of the people that know me and that are outside of the church, I think they thought that we were quizzed or we had to keep track of what we ate and like turn it into somebody, like that was a report card kind of issue. And so that's why I was thinking that it was kind of funny, some of the rumors that get started about what other faiths believe and things like that. So just in case it hasn't been said, this is all by volunteerism. No one is telling us what we can or can't eat. It is not by, what's the word, Richard? Constraint, yeah. So, all right, other thoughts? Let's turn to, I want to look at this, why some foods are hard to stop eating. I thought this was interesting. Because like you, Ray, that first paragraph in section 86, it talks about the consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days. I have warned you and forewarned you by giving you this word of wisdom by revelation. So in 1833, when this was given, was there a cigarette industry at that time that knew that we're going to create something called a cigarette and it's going to have nicotine in it and we're going to get people super addicted to this? And we're going to learn that there's carcinogens in cigarettes, but we don't care. We're going to keep selling our stuff, and that'll be their problem. We're going to hide it because the government would shut us down. I mean, they knew none of that, right? In 1833, there was none of that. So, but we've all lived through now you can't advertise to children about cigarettes because they're so harmful. There's different rules about, what do you have to be 18 to buy a cigarette? 21, okay. So you can go in the military now at 18, but you can't smoke. So it's always interesting what our country comes up with the ages on things like that. But I know too, I have a friend who is the healthiest person I know and listens to podcasts and all the things about eating and health and all this. And she told me that the other day, she's like, I don't understand. She's like, I am the most disciplined person in working out and what I eat. She said, but I cannot give up cigarettes. And she doesn't smoke them all the time, but she does sometimes. And it's terrible because she has, what's the thing where you can't breathe sometimes? Asthma, yeah. She's a little bit asthmatic, and so it's a terrible thing for her, and she wants to be so healthy. So, that addiction is so hard for people to break. And then I know that it talks about strong drinks and alcohol, and I literally have two friends who have lost their marriages to alcoholism, and I think that's, it's also very addictive and can be a problem for a lot of people. So it's good sense that we be careful of those things. But anyway, my point was in 1833, they didn't know any of this stuff. There's no way Joseph Smith would have been able to know, I know what's going to be bad down the road, So I think it's really evidence that this is an inspired message that came to them, because I don't think any of this would have been things that they would have known or had any idea about. I mean, I still picture in 1833, you're just kind of surviving. You know, there's not a lot of downtime for comfort and those kinds of things. So this was, I think, really, probably really eye-opening at the time. And people were probably like, what? You know, what are we doing? Okay, well, yeah, we're doing that. So if we look at the why some foods are hard to stop eating, I learned in some of this research that there's actually something called a bliss point. And I thought this was interesting if you want to talk about the evils and designs in conspiring men, in the hearts of conspiring men. And I mean, Ray brings up a good point. I'm not sure that they were like really, oh, I know what'll be evil and, you know, terrible. Let's design a food that people can't stop eating. Like, or was it really about, well, yeah, my job is to make this food really enticing and to sell a lot of it. So even in that, you know, what was the spirit of their hearts? I don't know. But certainly at this point, most people could agree that if we're in that industry and we're doing those things, if we're designing Bliss Point, which is actually the right dose, if you will, of sugar, salt, fat, and texture to make food maximally enjoyable. And it said that food companies actually design various portions of all those things, and then they take them to taste tests, and they'll see which one people actually like the most and which the ones people eat the most, and then that's the way they design their food and that recipe for that food. And said when they've designed food to hit you just right in the sugar, salt, fat, and texture category, your brain's reward system actually encourages us to keep eating because it feels good at that point. And the goal is not just about flavor, but the maximum pleasure, and then, of course, the repeated consumption. And you can see that in packaging with the bright colors and, you know, the marketing that they do. I know when I had little kids, it was hard to keep them out of certain things because the packages look so fun and they have little elves on them or, you know, whatever the thing may be. So there's a lot of competing interest in the grocery store. Then they said they actually know that there's ingredients that increase your cravings. Again, the sugar activates your dopamine, and I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but dopamine is something that our body produces that we can get from like our cell phones when we're getting a like. If we posted something on Facebook and somebody likes it, that makes us feel good because, oh, now somebody's, you know, paying attention to me or whatever. Or as we're scrolling and we see something that's funny and it makes us laugh. And so all those little dopamine hits can come from things like that. Or at work, if we get a pat on the back, or at school or at cheer, or, you know, whatever the thing may be that we're doing. Maybe we're a teacher and we get a little hug or, you know, whatever, and that's a dopamine hit. And some of those things are good, you know, and some of those things are produced by, you know, the good in our life. I think, you know, when Richard smiles at me or says that I did something nice, then I get a dopamine hit because he loves me and that makes me feel good. And so some of these things can be good, and then some of these things can be more addictive to where they talk about kids with their screen time. They're addicted to their phones because they're getting these dopamine hits and things like that. So anyway, what's that? Yeah.
During my time through like therapy, I tried to research basically the two types of dopamine, which is your cheap dopamine versus your expensive dopamine. And the cheap dopamine is what you're referring to with scrolling. Every like or every whatever, every reshare is a hit of cheap dopamine, and it's very easy for specifically younger people to get into what we call a cheap dopamine loop.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're now just becoming like an addiction, like they need it, so they have to be in that constant state of a dopamine hit. So that's why people incessantly post, incessantly tweet, incessantly respond to somebody, because the lighting of their phone is a piece of cheap dopamine. So that cheap dopamine is much easier to get addicted to and be in a loop, as opposed to your expensive dopamine, which would be finishing a strong lift or finishing a run. It's coupled with the releasing of endorphins, also increases your dopamine. So that's why activity, people who have a runner's high feel in a better mood afterwards. One, because they're done running, but two, because they have an increase of dopamine from releasing endorphins. So it's just interesting to see there are two categories now. I'm sure there always have been, but now it's very prevalent where one is and where the other is. So I
Yeah.
think it's
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. And certainly not something, you know, in 1833, I wonder what a cheap dopamine hit would have been back in the day. I don't know. I'm sure there were, you know, but the expensive ones, I guess, means that you had to do something to earn that, right? I mean,
Basically, like instant gratification versus delayed gratification. Is
Okay.
how you can kind of map it
mhm,
to something in real life. Something you have to work for versus something that's instant,
mhm.
that still feels good, is cheap, versus something you have to work for that feels good, is expensive.
Yeah, I can see that. Because it's really easy for me to walk into the kitchen and look around and like, what's going to make me feel good? And grab that popcorners. I love those. I'm sorry. Yes, right.
Going back to what Brother Richard had mentioned earlier about the question of why. Why in 1833 does this come out? Well, we're called to establish Zion. So you got people coming over from Europe, people coming down from Canada, you got all these sorts of people coming in to Zion. And what's the background of their eating and drinking habits?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking there must have been some kind of conflict
Hmm.
that had to be about the church then,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this word of wisdom was a way to bring that to some resolve without being heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what the Lord wants of us if we want to acquire that state of celestial kingdom in order to go into Zion.
Yeah.
So one story about that. When we were in Kirtland, Ohio, which is where this was given, at this time, Joseph has essentially moved from the upstate New York, Palmyra area now into Kirtland, Ohio. This is when the Kirtland Temple was built, and a lot of the church had accumulated there. Now, this is when the apostles and the 70 are being called. When we were at the Kirtland Temple, and when we were at the Newell K. Whitney store. So there was a store there. Newell K. Whitney was the first bishop in the church. And so they're all gathering in this place. So one of the people that is giving the tours there, when we were there a couple of times, talked about the fact we were in one of the upper rooms where the meeting room was. Well, what was prevalent in the day was chewing tobacco.
Mm.
Chewing tobacco, and then what do you do with it when after you chew it? You
Spitting
have
it.
to spit it. And so all these spittoons sitting around. And so what they talked about was, and again, what this was shared as you go through the thing. But after the meetings were over, you have tobacco spit all over the floor, and you have these spittoons around, and Emma would come in, and they'd have to clean up all this. And so part of the complaining to Joseph was like, you gotta clean this, you gotta clean up your act around here. This is ridiculous. And not only is it, not healthy, but it's also disgusting and all of the things. So that was one of the things that had been shared when they were in Kirtland. And it just so happens that they're there, and this is part of it. So anyway, I share that story because it was shared with us as we were going through and learning more about what was happening at the time when the church and the saints were kind of gathered at Kirtland before they then transfer. And some of the people had already been sent out to the Jackson County area, but the bulk of the missionary work was leaving from and going out from Kirtland at that time after they had built the Kirtland Center.
Nice.
So.
Thank you. Any other comments? Stories?
I don't know. Uncle Bill told me like 4 or 5 years ago. I just remember having a conversation with him about sugar and how he believed that was the most addictive drug on the face of the planet, and trying to limit his sugar. And I think he's got a point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, I think he was just diagnosed as diabetic back at that time, maybe, or was trying to do something about it or whatever. So, yeah. I had read something that said you can recalibrate your taste buds in a few weeks, but I think that first week is pretty tough. I know you can have headaches from sugar withdrawal, caffeine withdrawal, all those things can be pretty painful, pretty uncomfortable. Now, let alone giving up cigarettes or something like that. I know they even have nicotine patches now to help you give that up, and you can wean yourself off of it that way. So the food industry, there's a bliss point. They're measuring how much sugar, salt, fat, texture, flavor enhancers. We read about MSG, yeast extract. Then there's engineered textures. I found this interesting. There's crunchy, creamy, or melt in your mouth. And they said that the combinations of foods they can create are hyper palatable. And then they said there's 3 most craveable food combinations. There's fat and salt, so that's chips, fries, pizza, fried chicken. Fat and sugar, ice cream, donuts, chocolate, and cakes. Refined carbohydrates and salt would be like your crackers, pretzels, chips, mac and cheese. And so it says these combinations rarely occur naturally in whole foods.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, wow, this is.
Let's see. This one I thought was interesting. The vanishing caloric density. So foods that dissolve quickly in your mouth, so the brain thinks that fewer calories were eaten. Can somebody think of a good example of that? What'd you say, Funyuns? Yeah, exactly. Funyuns, Cheetos, where you put it in your mouth and it just kind of dissolves, and you don't realize that you've eaten a whole bag because it's just mostly air, and you're just happy because you're just eating air. But yeah, then you look down and you say, oh my goodness, that was 400 and something calories. So yeah, that was my meal. Crunch engineering, making a crisp texture, and even the sound that chips make when we crunch them, actually they have engineered so that it's satisfying, sounds pleasing to the ears. A fast flavor release, seasoning powders, that would be like what they put on my popcorners because it's that instant cheesy flavor, love that. Excuse me. The mouthfeel engineering with the fats and emulsifiers, creating creamy textures, flavor layering. And then they had a thing on why restaurant foods taste better, because they use more fat and butter. Thank you. He knows this can get bad. It's warmer up here for some reason. Drier air. Then they have something called the Dorito effect, which caught my eye because I love Doritos. I loved Doritos. Flavor compounds and seasoning powders, that's what creates that intense flavor, and of course they're not very nutrient dense, and the cravings and preferences for the highly flavored foods. So the takeaway from all these different things was that the modern foods are actually carefully designed to maximize our pleasure while eating them, the flavor intensity, and to call us to crave them. And so understanding these strategies, I think, is helpful because when we realize why we're craving them, we can remind ourselves, well, that was because it's been made with this, this, and this, and none of that's a whole food or was created for me to eat. So maybe we'll find it easier to say no to those lavish treats. Then I had the WOW tips in a nutshell, and this also was from Mildred Smith's daughter. What was her first name?
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, okay. Well, the class that Richard went to was taught by this lady out at the missionary reunion. Yeah, I should have put her name on it. But this WOW tips in a nutshell, these are all from her class and everything that was stapled here together. So basically drink lots of water and milk. They're talking about getting dairy, your calcium for your daily use. Even the whole grains, I think that they do a pretty good job in false advertising. If you go to the store, you have to really look for the 100% whole grain versus just wheat or whatever, because if you look at the wheat breads, some of them are made out of the exact same stuff as the white breads are, but they don't, they look the same, but they don't have the same ingredients. So, multigrain.
It's kind of a cop-out. You're looking for the whole grain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same thing.
Okay.
You got it burned on that.
Right?
I'm gonna do a little plug.
Okay.
I'm not a marketing agent for this individual, but I've been looking at a lot of things online with Dr. Eric Berg. He looks at every food, what it does to your body, what your body needs for certain foods, and vitamins and minerals and what have you. And looking at bread, they said there's only 2 types of bread that we should be eating, either the sourdough or the Ezekiel bread. I never even heard of Ezekiel bread. What
It's very expensive,
So
yeah.
Ezekiel bread is about twice the price of regular loaf of bread you get off the shelf. But you don't have the preservatives and you don't have the added sugar. So the multi-grains, as we were talking about, is the way to go, especially in breads.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's also, I don't know if you'll talk to me, but I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but he follows a lot of this, and he breaks it down on how these foods are made, the butters and all that, all the additives that's put into it, why it's bad for you, and how it's damaging your body. So that's a good one too, if anybody's interested, and when he breaks it down, it follows, a lot of what we should be.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons why we should be eating other stuff that's produced.
Right. Danielle?
So I noticed on here that it says at least 3 glasses of water. I just saw recently where, they were pushing water. How many, like 100 ounces a day or 8
Half,
glasses a day?
half. Yeah, if you take your weight and divide it in half, that's how many ounces you're supposed to have a day. I'd heard that.
They're saying this generation is the most hydrated generation, but that a lot of minerals are getting washed out of their bodies.
Depleted, yeah.
And that's created by the plastic water.
The water bottles, yeah.
Kind of like breakfast is the most important meal of the day was created by the
Cereals, yeah.
cereal industry. So just kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, and now with the water bottles and stuff, they're talking about, we moved away from plastics, so everybody started carrying their big canisters of water, and then they found black mold in the, canisters of water, so now you got to be careful of those, and so it's always, it's like, I don't know, it feels like when we change something, we go so drastically. We're like all in, and then we mess that up, and then we got to go all into something else. Because I remember 30 years ago, fat was, as long as you didn't eat more than 32 grams of fat a day, you were fine. So the Snackwell cookies came out, and I would sit and eat a box of those for lunch because there was only 2 grams of fat in the whole box. So it was perfect. But then we found out that, oh, right, calories is king. So yeah, that's just always, we're chasing our tails sometimes, it feels like, right?
With all these hidden things that we've been talking about, which a lot of them is out there, to me, that's why it's so much more important that I say grace every time I take a bite of food.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a snack or mealtime, we just don't know what's there, and we don't know really how much the Holy Spirit is involved in this process, which I think He is, otherwise, why would we do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great point. Somebody had, I forget where I read it, but what's something that lots of people drink that we have no idea if it's clean or not? And if you think about a can of Coke, a can of soda, you pop that tab and then you put that metal up to your mouth. You have no idea where that's been, but we all do it, And even like a water bottle, I unscrew the lid, but I'm always like real careful. I just want to touch that little part right there, So that's so true. We don't know where any of it's been when we think about it. Any other thoughts?
Well, and how about carrying these water bottles around, especially these young kids, and they just, if they don't get cleaned well, you just keep carrying the same water bottle around for a week, and who knows, I don't know, I'm a little, yeah, a month, I'm a little phobic about that, you just pick up germs, anyway.
You just leave it in your locker. It's fine, and then fill it up every day. Danielle.
Or leave it in a classroom for a week and then
Ooh.
pick it up and drink it.
Yummy. Yeah. She recommended having a salad daily, and my hat's off to everybody that can pull that off. It takes so much work to make a salad. Oh, maybe I need a cheat code or something, but by the time we cut up the cucumbers and the tomatoes and wash the lettuce and get it just right and then make the salad, I'm like, fine, whatever. It's just, I don't know, maybe I have a mental hang up with that. 3 servings of vegetables a day, try to vary the color. 2 servings of fruit, but don't count your orange juice. It should be an orange because there's lots less sugar that way and lots more fiber that way. Fish for your main course at least twice a week. That one's hard for me personally. I don't like the smell of fish in my house. But I do like salmon, you know, that one's easy. I can throw that in that little foil and get the, all our good fish oils. Have a meal, well, but even that's difficult, sorry, because I don't like the salmon that's at the little store here, so I like to go to the one in Sellersburg. Well, that's not very convenient, and so yeah, all the planning and all of the, you know, you have to know your schedule for the week and when's everybody going to be home and what's everybody want to eat and when am I going to go buy the food, how am I going to have time to make the food. So all those things can be very challenging, and I know there's a couple of people that do the meal prepping and all the things, and hats off to you guys. I think that's fantastic. That's definitely a good way to get all that stuff done for the week. And it talks about eggs. Whoops, I skipped one. So have a meal with eggs or whole grain, beans, milk product, a main course twice a week. So they had a little recipe idea there, but to use red meat sparingly. Said for protein utilization in your body, eggs actually are at the top at 87%, milk is next, and then red meats are only at 67%. And then it said to add nuts and seeds for nutrition and flavoring and whole grain cereals, salads, and desserts. I know chia seeds are really good. Lots of people like adding the flax on top of whatever they eat. I'm serious. And then it said to walk for at least 30 minutes a day. So on top of your grocery shopping, your cooking, make sure you walk 30 minutes every day. I know. And then sleep for at least 8 hours if possible. So yeah, I think we can all see, I mean, I'm kind of giggling, but I mean, it takes effort to make this all work. It really takes effort to have a list of things that you want to go to the store and get, meal prep, all the things, and it has to be, these things are not going to just happen, I guess is what I'm saying. So if we take the time to be a little more healthy and, you know, for myself personally, it has to be baby steps. I can't just throw myself into this because then I'll just not be able to do any of it. So, but anyway, the number 12, pray a Thanksgiving prayer and worship the Lord daily, obviously, is always a good thing to do. So there's a couple other pages here with various things. I liked the third page here in this handout, not by commandment or constraint. The top paragraph says, so why didn't the Lord give section 86 as a commandment? Firstly, the Lord told us not to be commanded in all things. Doctrine and Covenants 58:6c-d says, behold, it is not meet that I should command in all things, for he that is compelled in all things, the same is slothful and not a wise servant, wherefore he receiveth no reward. Verily I say, men should be anxiously engaged in a good cause and do many things of their own free will. This does not mean that we get to go off and unguided in the things that we do. In Doctrine and Covenants 46:3b through c, we are commanded to ask of God in all things, doing all things with prayer and thanksgiving, that we may not be seduced by evil spirits or doctrines of devils or the commandments of men, for some are of men and others are of devils. And so I think that God has always been very consistent, obviously, in this thought that telling somebody to do something and commanding it is much less rewarding for that person than for them to be able to choose to want to do that of their own free will. And so I think if you look at, you know, when you do go to a store and you see all the different things, or a restaurant, and you see all the things on the menu, and you have to be willing to make those decisions, and maybe it means that you pray before you go, and help me to make good decisions, or help me to find the time to make a meal plan, help me to, you know, these things. All of these things can be very rewarding when we are able to accomplish them the way that God has for us. And, you know, heaven knows there's so many things that can go wrong with a body in the first place. So if we try to do the best that we can, then hopefully we can stave off some of these bad things that may happen if we ingest inflammation and all those kinds of things. Nathan?
One thing that I found by going through different phases of, I'll call it fitness and nutrition, is look for the results that will make you keep going. So for me, before I started meal prepping, around 2 p.m., 3 p.m. every afternoon at work, I would be near falling asleep at my desk. I was like, what the heck is going on here? Why is this happening? Started meal prepping, started eating whole foods 80% or more of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Two steps forward, one step back, you know. 3 weeks ago, I didn't meal prep because I just couldn't do it. I was exhausted, you know. And so I could have, but it wasn't a priority. That's what that really means, right? So you have to choose what's your priority every week, and what can help you choose your priorities is those results that you see make you feel better.
Yes, Ray.
Jesus, being the rebel that he was, is always turning the tables on the rigidity, religious aspect of the Israelites. And I think of the one where Jesus with his disciples going through the cornfield, they grabbed the ears of corn and started eating, and they get chastised because they didn't wash their hands. No, washing was a real religious thing with them. They washed anything and everything. But the main point was that Jesus was bringing that you need to be washed in my spirit to be made clean. So in taking that aspect, that was a foreshadow of what was to come. So even Jesus went up against the constraints of quote the church back then.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, any other closing thoughts, Richard?
And then I would just close, or my thought is that because some of these things can be difficult, and they may be new for some of us, and we're all at different stages and places of trying to do different things to help ourselves. One of the things that I appreciate about our class, our time together, is that we can support each other. So if you're struggling in an area, share with each other. And I just want to encourage everybody who's doing the things that they're doing. So it's you're not in it alone. We're all in it together. And again, the why is so that we can all be better prepared to help build the kingdom and to share, the gospel of Jesus Christ. So as we said, I look at a lot of these things and I'm like, oh, I am so far away from where I ought to be. But I also know that I know you all are trying to do the same thing, and it gives me encouragement when I hear Nathan talk about the things that he's trying to do or what Ray's doing. And so those are it's encouraging to hear. So keep it up, because what you're doing is encouraging others, and maybe one day I'll be an encouragement to you, but I doubt it, but I'm trying. And so, but anyway, I think it's that this time together is also what I think the Lord has asked us to do, is that we can share and lean on each other to try to accomplish those things.
I agree. I mean, when COVID did away with our Sunday school time and our prayer service time, it's very difficult to get to know people on a Sunday morning only. So if you, for a worship. But I love that we have time to come together and share thoughts and ideas and how the scriptures mean different things, or how, we've